to The Slice, where we treat the rules in sports like your 7th grade history teacher treated the Civil War. We are way too enthusiastic about things that depress most people. And today, we're covering collective bargaining agreements in sports. Wait, no, come back, come on now, don't stop the video. I swear, we can make this fun. Just give me a chance. Here's a fun video. See, we'll be fine. But yes, collective bargaining, 2 words that have billionaires across America shaking their fists at random clouds in the sky. The reason we have to discuss collective bargaining agreements is based entirely out of necessity. Within the next 4 years, each of the 4 major sports leagues in the United States faces the possibility of strikes or lockouts. Now, in 2 of the sports, there's not really much to talk about yet. The NHL CBA expires in 2022, but both the league and the Players Association have opt-out clauses in September of 2019, while the NBA is smack dab in the middle of their agreement. The problem with the NHL? A labor dispute has never been resolved without first going to a lockout.
The owners are not prepared to operate under this collective bargaining agreement for another season, so we need to get to making a deal, and that's what we're going to be working towards.
Right now, it seems like 2 sides are pretty far apart.
I had hoped that the approaches we've taken today would put us within range. So far, apparently, it's not true.
Yeah, they're that one couple that you're friends with, but you always feel awkward around because it seems like they can never make a decision without fighting. And they're Canadian. But the times, they are a-changin'. The negotiations have begun cordially this time around, and there's a couple fun little points that are bound to come up during the negotiations. The most important, the NHL is planning to add a Seattle franchise in 2021. If there's a chance of a lockout headed into the first season of a new franchise, it could be catastrophic for the team gaining a foothold. So there's incentive for the league to not go to a lockout. But the story of every CBA is about the concessions. And the one bargaining chip the league definitely has, the Olympics. In 2018, NHL players were barred from competing at the Winter Games, and players want to go in 2022. The league also has a vested interest in 2022, with the games being held in China. The NHL has already started attempts at making inroads into the Chinese market, and they'd be more than willing to let their stars go to further expose the brand to the market. All in all, it's got the chance to be smooth sailing, but it's the NHL, so they might just start fighting anyways for no reason. So what about the NBA? Well, the league and the NBA Players Association just signed a new CBA in 2017, and it isn't set to expire until 2024. However, either party can opt out at the conclusion of the 2022-2023 season, provided that notice is given by mid-December 2022. So there's some time, but there's already issues creeping up.
I think the NBA offseason has become more interesting than the NBA regular season, and this is the biggest one of all. The Pelicans have agreed to finally trade Anthony Davis to the Lakers.
The Woj bomb happened at 1:50 a.m. Eastern Time. Sources tell Adrian Wojnarowski that the Clippers are making a trade for Paul George with OKC. It'll clear the path for Kawhi Leonard to sign with the Clippers on a 4-year, $141 million contract. It was George that requested the trade reportedly earlier this week.
You see, the 2019 NBA offseason played out more like an episode of Days of Our Lives, with plot twists galore and emotions running high, but any tensions between ownerships or front offices and players will only add more fuel to any negotiating fire come CBA renewal time. In the last CBA, contract language was key, with the introduction of the Supermax contract to hold on to young elite stars in smaller markets with 5-year deals with no options, and 2-way contracts for easing developmental players into the league with limited service time in the NBA before being returned to the G League, the NBA's developmental league. The CBA is filled with gray language that has led to ambiguity, and the more players drive for control and power, the more owners resist. It's something to keep an eye on. So now the MLB. There's gonna be a strike. Moving on. Okay, so we have to talk about the MLB. So in the last 2 CBAs, the MLB and its owners have come out massively ahead, and it's led to the most vicious of cycles. See, MLB players come into the majors under a certain framework for contracts. If you've played less than 3 years, the team essentially chooses your salary, usually around the league minimum. From there, you go to 3 years of salary arbitration. In this scenario, you'd get to negotiate with the team, but there's a deadline of a hearing in front of a panel of arbitrators, and if push comes to shove and the arbitrators have to choose an amount, it's either one you gave or the one the team gave. There's no other options in the middle. Oh, and the arbitrators are usually also old school evaluators, so the team's going to win this one. I'm sorry. But now you've gone through 6 years, and waiting on the other side is free agency, and it's time to secure the bag, right? No. If you're an elite level player in the MLB, you've probably undergone something known as service time manipulation. And any phrase that has the word manipulation in it is terrible. Think about it. There is no way the word manipulation just doesn't feel slimy. So, what's that process like? Well, in this, your club probably sent you to the minor leagues despite your exceeding talent and lack of developmental potential against lackluster competition, because they could force you to wait another year before getting to the open market. But Akhil, I hear people crying out in the distance, this is how it's always functioned. To which I answer, first off, wow, like I really didn't expect anyone to have this knowledge, so good job, really, good job. And you're right, but there's one other word that's changed all of this: analytics.
In one, but 3 defective players to replace Giambi. Is that what I'm hearing?
You're not buying into this Bill James bullshit, are you?
This is the new direction of the Oakland A's. We are card counters at the blackjack table, and we're going to turn the odds on the casino.
Yes, analytics. See, analytics have changed the way teams view players, and they'd rather pay younger talent less money for as long as they can and hold off on paying free agents exorbitant contracts. And they're allowed to. But then you end up with an offseason like this past one.
If 2 26-year-olds, exemplary talents, cannot get the long-term deal, there's going to be a strike when this collective bargaining agreement's over. And I'm not saying that the owners are doing anything wrong. They're not. The players signed a terrible CBA.
Not one, but 2 generational stars in Bryce Harper and Manny Machado had to wait until the spring to get their contracts. So yeah, players aren't feeling too great about the whole situation. And that's not even taking into account the pay structure for players in the minors or problems with the escalation of the luxury tax. None of those words mean anything to most of you, but the biggest takeaway for everyone, there's problems everywhere for the MLB. So when 2021 rolls around, be prepared for a life without baseball. Which, if we're being honest, for most of you won't really be that different at all. I'm sorry, I love baseball, but popularity, yeah, yikes. But that brings us to the NFL. And if you thought the MLB had problems, then allow me to make this way more fun. Since the last CBA was signed in 2011, we've witnessed the entirety of Colin Kaepernick's career, multiple states legalize marijuana, players sit out entire seasons, growing contract numbers under an inflated salary cap, an entire gamut of violations of the personal conduct policy, Deflategate, and there's been a lot. A lot is happening in the NFL. So how are the players feeling?
Yesterday, Sports Business Journal's Liz Mullen reported that NFLPA Executive Director DeMaurice Smith sent an email to player agents urging them to have their clients save money in the event of a work stoppage, the legendary war chest we always hear about before we have work stoppages. Now,
yeah, the NFL Players Association has already issued a work stoppage guide to their players, helping them plan for any impending lockout or strike. So it's time to start paying attention. What are the issues this time around? Well, let's start with the biggest one, the one that everyone is talking about. Guaranteed contracts. Wait, no. I see you reaching to close the video again. Stop that. Here, look, a goofy cat.
Usher tried to pick up. Oh, wow. And one of the security guys, look at this cat. Terrific stuff by the cat. Outstanding.
Okay, look, I know this stuff can be dense and boring, but there's actually wild dynamics at play about compensating players. Unlike the other major leagues, the NFL does not fully guarantee contracts to their top players. There's nothing stopping them from doing so, as there's nothing written in the CBA preventing teams from offering it to players. But there's only been one guy who's gotten one of those deals, and it hasn't been Tom Brady, or Aaron Rodgers, or Drew Brees. No, it was this guy.
You like that? You like that?
Yes, that's right. Current Minnesota Vikings starting quarterback and overall enthusiast for life, Kirk Cousins. And he is the only man in the NFL with a fully guaranteed deal after signing a 3-year, $84 million contract last year. No other player has attempted to flex their power in that kind of way, and honestly, good for Cousins. He finally got to free agency and he got paid. And that brings us to the franchise tag and the 5th-year option. There was once a time when rookies were paid like some of the best players at their positions after they were drafted. That doesn't happen anymore unless you're dumb enough to draft a running back in the top 5. Looking at you, New York. thanks to something called the rookie pay scale. Every rookie contract is fixed according to the CBA, but with an interesting twist. All first-round picks are subject to a fifth-year option from the team, where teams can affordably keep young players for one more season. After that, teams have the option of the franchise tag.
He's absolutely right. He deserves his money. He deserves to be the highest paid running back in football. He deserves a long-term deal. The sport is entirely too violent for him to be going out there on one-year franchise tag offers. There's no way on earth that that can be justified.
One guy who didn't win, at least hasn't won so far in his NFL career, Jadeveon Clowney. This is the prime example of the downside of the rookie wage scale. It was put in place to ensure that busts don't suck millions out of the system without earning it. So the guys who do earn it don't get paid what they would have gotten paid. Jadeveon Clowney, if he'd have been the first overall pick 4 years earlier than he was in 2014, he would have gotten so much more money than he received. But he still hasn't gotten a second contract. And you've got the Texans playing games with him.
Yeah, players aren't too happy about that. The franchise tag keeps players from hitting the open market, although at a bit steeper of a price. It still remains as a way for keeping players under contract without potentially paying them fair market value. It's similar to what we talked about in the MLB and service time manipulation, except there's no manipulation here. It's the system that was created, and it's flawed. But none of that will probably change. There's too much uncertainty in the NFL for the owners to ever get on board with guaranteeing contracts. Football is a violent game, and careers can be over in the blink of an eye. As sleazy as it sounds, owners just don't want to be on the hook for that. As far as the franchise tag and the rookie pay scale, the players may have to give up way too much to get what they want, especially since the owners have no incentive to give up that power. So what options do the players have? Well, the first would be to negotiate an increase of revenue sharing. Gross revenue sharing, introduced in the last CBA, allowed the players some form of say over what money the owners took and used. For example, stadium credits. Man, football's come a long way from fistfights between Harvard and Yale, but yes, stadium credits. The owners can use a percentage of gross revenue to pay for stadium renovations and constructions as long as it doesn't push the players below a certain threshold. In the last CBA, the owners ran out of that money, and with high-profile stadium projects becoming more and more commonplace, they'll want an increase in that, because billionaires can't afford their own stadiums or anything like that, Players will also push for health care for life, but that doesn't help them deal with injuries, as workmen's compensation claims are better suited for that. Which brings us to the non-economical goals. As I mentioned earlier, a lot has happened in the NFL.
Recording of Tyreek Hill and his fiancée Crystal Espinal discussing the criminal case and their son's broken arm.
The San Francisco 49ers quarterback knelt during the national anthem at the Niners LA Rams game on Monday night. Teammate Eric Reed joined him.
Was more bad news concerning Josh Gordon. Yeah. He was suspended indefinitely again by the league. Give us an update.
Well, it was not for marijuana.
The NFL has taken a PR roller coaster in the last few years, and one of their top issues is their insistence on limiting players' usage of what has become a legal substance in multiple states, marijuana. Alongside that, the league has also taken criticism in how they've handled punishments, specifically due to most of that being at the whims of the commissioner, Roger Goodell. Expect there to be a heavy push to limit the commissioner's authority in punishing players, as well as a loosening of marijuana restrictions. But is it enough? If you ask me, no. All of these solutions are going to end up workarounds to still keep NFL players from their money. Just because a guy signs a 5-year deal doesn't mean he's secure for 5 years. NFL contract structures usually provide an out for a team after the first 2 or 3 years of the deal. And in the grand scheme of CBAs, there's a common thread in the two sports most likely facing a work stoppage. It's a problem as old as America. Billionaires trying to minimize and keep down a workforce that would like to be compensated fairly and have some fair value. But look, you just survived a conversation about collective bargaining in sports. I think you've earned this.
John Collins got ejected at the end of the game on the weekend, high-fiving everybody on the way out, including that kid's face.
Oh, he took it pretty well, that kid.
Yeah. He sure did.
Wasn't that great? But hey, that's just a slice of collective bargaining. I'm Akhil Ganesh, and I'll see you next time.